let's talk about astrophotography. So astrophotography is taking pictures of astronomical objects. So that could be the moon, it could be stars, it could be a lot of different things. There's some really neat shots of like galaxies out there that are taken through telescopes. You don't actually need a telescope to do astrophotography. You can use just a regular camera. So I use a DSLR, which is one of the bigger digital cameras. Some people even just use their phone. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do astrophotography. And astrophotography, basically you're taking pictures and you want to let in all of the light in order to capture those usually dim objects. So like stars, if you've ever tried to take a photo of stars on a regular camera, it might not have turned out very well because they're pretty dim and you can't see them as well. But astrophotography is how we use the camera to let in extra light so that we can see those stars. So before we talk about the camera, we're going to talk a little bit about how cameras work in order to do astrophotography. So with your camera, there's 3 different things that have to do with the amount of light in your camera. And for astrophotography, you're going to need a lot of light because stars are pretty dim, and so the camera doesn't pick them up as well, but you need to let in a lot of extra light. So there's 3 things. One is shutter speed, another is aperture, and the third one is ISO. So shutter speed is just how long the camera is open. So inside the camera there's the lens and the sensor, and in between them is the shutter, and it opens and closes. So the shutter speed is how long it's open. Also inside the lens is a hole, so it can get smaller and bigger, and that's the aperture. And for a long exposure photo, for a star photo, you want a really wide aperture usually, so that it lets in a lot of light. And then the third thing is ISO, and that has to do with sensitivity. And it was originally the sensitivity of the film, so like in older cameras, but now it's a digital setting in the camera. So today we're going to be using some different equipment. One is this camera. This is a DSLR, which stands for Digital Single Lens Reflex. And that just refers to how the mirror is set up inside of the camera. The next equipment we're going to be using is this tripod, which is the silver 3-legged thing that the camera is on right now. And that holds the camera nice and steady while the shutter is open for so long so that we don't get a blurry picture. And the last piece of equipment we're going to use is this remote. And the remote allows us to take the picture without touching the camera. So this remote is corded, and it's attached to the camera right here. And then you push this button down to take a picture. You can also push and hold the button, and that allows you to have the shutter open for as long as you would like. The longest I've ever had it open for is about 15 minutes. So we're here doing some star photography. It's about 10:20 p.m. and we're going to talk about some of the settings. So we talked about, this is a DSLR, and some of the settings we're using. So we have the shutter speed, which is 13 seconds right now, and the aperture, which is 3.5. And that just means that the shutter is going to be open for 13 whole seconds, which is a lot longer than you would take photos of in the daylight. And that also means that the aperture is as wide as my camera will let it go at this zoom. So we have up here, you can see my camera is set to the lowest amount of zoom, so it's the widest possible. And then I also have it on manual focus, which, because the camera doesn't know that the stars aren't bright enough for the camera's autofocus to pick up, so I have to do it manually. So one last cool setting is that you see here it says bulb. And what that means is instead of having a shutter speed that's automatically programmed, you use the remote, and however long the remote is held down, that's how long the shutter is open. And I use this for star trails. So the longest photo I've ever taken was exposed for about 15 minutes. So the remote has something nice where you push it down and you can hold it, and you heard that click of the shutter, and the shutter is open until I come back here and close it. So then it takes a minute for the camera to process. That green light is the processing, and the processing time depends on how long the shutter was open for, but it can be quite a while. So here you see this is pretty washed out. It's pretty bright. Okay, so we're also going to look at taking astrophotography on a cell phone. So we're going to go to More, and we're going to go to and I'm going to leave the ISO, and then I'm going to put a timer on of 5 seconds because that'll give me enough time to adjust the camera. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to set the exposure, and I'm going to set it to 10 seconds. All right, so I'm going to come and position my camera, and then I'm going to click the button or the shutter, and it's on a timer, so then I'm going to adjust it. So sometimes star photography is a little hit or miss, and you can tell that this is overexposed because it's way too washed out. So we're going to go back to settings, and we're going to adjust the shutter speed, and let's go with 4 seconds. So that'll be a lot faster.